mean, let's say in this like imaginary world where you could like head transplant, you're on another body. I know this is kind of a little.
Dude, are you in philosophy?
Life. I think I kind of want to back up. What do you define as like a life? Do you mean it like in the scientific sense? I mean, everything we know could be wrong in the same way that like we could all be living in a simulation.
Do you know the gospel? Do you understand the gospel?
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the difference, I assume you're talking about like that in comparison to abortion. It's, in my opinion, life support. In my opinion, it is perfectly fine to pull the plug, and the reason for that is because if you let nature take its course, in that case, that person will die. But the reason why abortion is so different is you're not letting nature take its course. You're instead inserting yourself into nature, and you are actively killing the child and preventing nature from growing that child, preventing the natural thing from occurring. So that's the reason why that is so unapplicable, is because in one instance the person would just die on their own, and in the other instance the person would live and grow and be healthy.
Could I ask you a follow-up?
Yeah, dude, you got it.
Yeah,
as many as you want.
I kind of gave him my spiel, but I really found this very interesting. Although I don't necessarily agree, I think it's great that we're opening up this conversation. But so, do you think it's more important for the potentiality of life or the existence of it? So I'm saying, like, are we talking about?
We're talking about the real existence of life.
So at this current moment, is like, I'm saying like in this second, it's life, or it will eventually become life. Which to you is more important?
It is life from the moment of conception.
Okay, I guess let me rephrase it. Consciousness, like consciousness right now, or it will become conscious.
So we can't kill people just because they're unconscious.
True, but.
And the example there with the life support is, instead of taking them off of life support, you're going in and you're stabbing them. That would be wrong, to go in there and stab them while they're on life support. That's not letting nature take its course. That's actively inserting yourself into nature and killing that person.
Okay. Would you agree that? I mean, this is kind of. Would you agree that meaningless human suffering is bad? I just want to, like.
Human suffering is bad. Sure.
Yeah. So when you take someone off life support, they do. They end up like starving essentially, and they will like. Depending on what the case is, like whether they need assisted breathing, like they'll choke, like you could make an argument for euthanasia at that point. Do you believe that's immoral as well?
Yes, euthanasia is immoral, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In those cases where instead of like a quick, swift death, there'll be a slow, painful death, because their bodies still can, feel even though they're not conscious of it. Like their bodies still will go through those. Yeah,
I fundamentally believe that murder is the taking of innocent human life. The taking part is active on your part.
Okay. The innocent part is pretty important.
Yes, because killing, because if that wasn't the case, then it would be contradictory to say self-defense or execution for capital crime.
I agree with you on that.
Okay, nice.
So, would you not say that like taking someone off life support's an action?
It is an action, but you're letting nature take its course at that point. You're not assisting them any longer.
How do you feel about, like, if I see somebody who's, let's say they're like hanging off a building.
Yeah.
And there's like one ledge, and they're like, I guess they have one arm or something. They can't pull themselves up, and there's like a burning pile below. Can I let nature take its course in that situation?
No, I would say that there is an obligation that you have to try to save someone's life, which I think that obligation still applies to someone who's on life support. Is you have to do everything you can to try to save that person's life, in my opinion. And once you have reached the point of, okay, my options are exhausted, they're brain dead, whatever. So that's what I would say is, there's sins of omission, there's crimes of omission even, where if you see something occurring and you don't do something about it, you can actually be punished for that.
That's true.
And even in the U.S., not even just biblical law, but yeah.
I do agree that you should probably save that person who's about to die.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna hop over here.
Yeah, you're fine.
Also bright.
Dude, it is bright, man. It's sunny. It's a great day, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
When you say to save a human life, I think I kind of want to back up. What do you define as like a life? Do you mean it like in the scientific sense of like it can respond to its environment, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cell reproduction. Yeah. So
right.
so like,
Yeah.
but it's human life. There's two words there. Human life. So human is important too, because I can cut off my arm and then, or whatever, let's just say my arm gets lopped off and it's sitting there. Well, you shouldn't stab it. I think that's wrong for a different reason. You want to be killing me because you're stabbing my still living, because still reproducing cells for a little bit there, arm, because it's not full human. It's part of me.
Okay.
Just like cancer, because people mention cancer cells all the time. It's like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's also different.
That's really dumb.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So what if it was, I mean, let's say in this like imaginary world where you could like head transplant, you're on another body. I know this is kind of a little.
Dude, are you in philosophy? Are you?
No,
are you
I'm not, but I find it very
okay.
interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
So like you
transfer the head.
and,
okay.
Like, it's just kind of like an extension of the arm argument.
Okay.
It's just a body, no head.
Okay.
Do you think it's immoral to stab that? Like in the same sense.
So you've transferred the head from one person to the next.
There's no head on that body.
There's no head on that body.
Yeah, it's like.
It's immoral. Again, it's immoral for a different reason.
Of course.
Because the Bible talks about desecrating corpses, and why that's bad. And that's not just like one thing. That's many things. So, anyways, that's why it would be wrong. But it wouldn't be taking that life.
Okay. So you make the distinction at like this part, the brain. Am I making too many steps here? Like, is it like you make the distinction
when you're a fully grown human? Okay. So here's the thing, though. You go through stages and ages of development. The example you gave was fully grown human. Yeah. And so yes, while a fully grown human, the brain is the most important thing, because hey, heck, maybe someday they will figure out how to transfer a head.
Exactly.
I mean, who the heck knows? That would be very interesting. But the difference between that and a child in the womb is fundamentally just it's a different stage of development. So like if I could, you're probably, the argument you're probably thinking through there is like, well, brain waves indicate life, indicate you're alive, indicate you're human. Therefore, before brain waves, why does that thing have value? But
actually, exactly.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So, but I would just say that no, it's in a different stage of development.
And why
it's not dead; it's alive. And therefore, it's not a dog, right?
Yeah,
it's a human.
That's true, but I guess my thinking is, why does that different stage also require the same morality? Because then you could say, like, again, like we're talking about fertilized eggs before. Like, I mean, would that again have the same moral, I guess, significance as a human life?
Yeah, a fertilized egg, 100%. Okay. Yeah, because that is 100% a new human being. It's 100%. It's a completely new set of DNA, and if you let nature take its course with that fertilized egg, it will either naturally die from like a miscarriage or something like that, or it will naturally live. Okay. But we don't have the right to insert ourselves into that.
Okay, what if it's like a fertilized embryo, like
ectopic?
Like in vitro
tubal
fertilization. So like, it's yet we have to make the action to then.
Yeah, I'm not for IVF. IVF is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was really interesting. There's a bigger group that's down south in Oklahoma that does similar stuff, and they went to North Carolina. They had like a ton of people there, right? They went outside of the IVF clinics, held signs similar to this, and who was out there opposing them? Pro-choice people. And so while there are pro-life people, which we're not pro-life, but that's a whole nother thing. While there are pro-life people who support IVF, like Ted Cruz, I think it's awful. I think it's horrible, because what's going on is you're making human beings, and then you are selecting. Like, I know someone close to me who has done this, and what they did was they went through those. They had them tested for genetic disorders. They had them tested for whether they would be male or female, and then they killed every single one that they didn't want, and they kept the one they wanted that didn't have the genetic defect. That was, I think they wanted a male, and that was a male. And so, yeah, it's very, very gross to me.
Okay. So.
And just as bad as murder of born.
Interesting.
Not everybody would say that.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody would agree that we're living on a dome right now, but yeah, exactly. So, Wait, hold on. Let me think for a second. I had a thought, and then I lost me with the.
You're good, man.
So. Yeah. So, I guess you're making the distinction that it would have naturally progressed, but it wouldn't have naturally progressed at that point to a life. So, let's say that.
Well, yeah, because the scientists have inserted themselves into nature. They've taken the sperm, which was procured through pornography. They've taken that sperm and then they've put it together with the egg. They've inserted themselves into nature, but they still created a human.
Okay. So, do you think, just generally inserting yourself in nature is a bad thing?
With regards to life and non-life, yeah. So, if it's a life-saving action, that's different than a life-killing action.
So it's not necessarily
inserting into nature, right? It's the inserting yourself into nature that actively causes the death of another human being.
Okay, that's fair, but I think we're also talking about whether or not that's a human being, because I think human being is different than a human life, and I think that's a big distinction. Because again, people who are brain dead on life support.
What's the difference between a life and a being? What's the difference
on life support? If they're brain dead, they are technically they respond to their environment. They fulfill all the definitions for a human life, but they're not necessarily.
And people have come back from that, right?
Huh?
People have come back from that, right? We all go through periods of unconsciousness. When you sleep, you're unconscious. It wouldn't be right for me to kill you when you're unconscious. So.
What if they were no, he's never gonna wake up from his coma? What if they knew that for sure?
Well, that's what I'm saying. In those scenarios, letting nature take its course, as in pulling the plug, I don't believe that that's murder. Fundamentally, because you're not actively going in there and actively stabbing the person. You're just saying, I'm going to remove this, and if the person lives, they live. If they die, they die.
Well, you are inserting yourself in nature a little bit. By default of saving their life, you're kind of.
Well, you've already inserted yourself into nature to try to save their life, and now after much time and effort, you've determined that their life is not going to be able to be saved, and then you're going to let nature take its course. You're taking back the action that you had before. So it's very different, because abortion requires an active taking of a pill. It requires an active going in there. So the early ones are pills. Later it's active ripping apart limb by limb.
Yeah. I mean, they are still about the actions though. Again, withdrawing yourself isn't not an action. It's still an action in just a certain way. We're just talking about the exertion of the body. That kind of is irrelevant from morality in that case.
Yeah. I kind of feel like we're getting into the weeds a little bit here, but I do think that is the distinction, that the effort has been made to save the person's life, and then it's like if you want to make comparisons, and maybe this isn't the perfect comparison, but it's like running into a burning building, trying to get to someone who is alive still. They're in the other room, but then things crash down in front of you and you can't get to them. And is it okay for you to turn around, or are you going to stay in that burning building and keep on pushing forward even though you're going to die?
I would say that's different because you're risking your own.
It is different, yeah.
And I would actually say, I don't know if
I agree
on this, but if it's endangering the mother, do you believe it still to be?
No.
Okay,
That's
then we agree. Okay.
No. I don't think so. First of all, can you predict that with 100% certainty that a mother will die from some sort of complication during the pregnancy?
Pretty much. In the sense that we can predict someone will die from a certain disease, yes.
So you're telling me that you can know that with 100% certainty that she is going to die?
If she's bleeding out, then yes. Internal bleeding as
So if she's bleeding out, why is the solution go in and kill the baby, which is just the definition of abortion, CDC speaking, rather than deliver the baby and try to, how does killing the baby solve her internal bleeding?
Because some operations require more bleeding, and that will, they don't have enough time. Again, I don't know enough about the exact procedures, but
yeah. Well, so what I'm telling you is that there's just never a reason. There's never a scenario where just killing the baby solves the mother who is about to die. That solves that issue. It just, what it does is it kills the baby, and then you've taken a life. You've murdered someone out of the expectation that someone else is going to die. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to die, and out of the expectation that I'm going to die, I could justify killing anyone, because I could be like, well, you might take my life, so I'll kill you. He might take my life, so I'll kill him.
It's not a might. Like, mothers do.
But it is a might. They do.
Mothers do die from childbirth.
They do.
Yeah.
They do die from childbirth, but they do not. But you can never predict that for certain, because you're not God. You can't know infallibly, and neither can the doctors. And doctors have been wrong about many, many things. I have friends. I have friends who their niece, the doctor said, your daughter's going to be born without a face. Like, everything behind here is going to be gone, and they're just going to have a skull and a body. Born, and she had like a little deformation here, but she's fine.
Yeah.
I know another guy who has another friend who same type of thing. Your baby's going to die. Get an abortion. Baby came out. Baby was fine. Doctors are wrong constantly. They cannot predict when someone's going to live or die. They can say, hey, I think that there's a chance that you might die here. But then what should they do? Should they take care of both people, or should they kill one person?
Well, they're dealing with a very high likelihood. Like, again, like, I don't doubt that, like, certain things happen. Certain things, like, definitely are exceptions to the norm. But, I mean, again, like, if it's a pretty much, like, certainty that something's going to happen, that, like, the mother is going to die, I don't think it's moral for her to say, like, I don't want to die. Please, like, help that circumstance.
So maybe we can find some common ground here a little bit.
Yeah.
What I disagree with is the intentional killing of that baby.
Okay.
Intentional is very important, right? So if a mother has, like, chemo, for instance, she needs to have chemo to save her own life, then and the chemo, again, this is another instance, has a chance to kill the baby. You don't know for certain, okay? You don't know for certain.
Yeah.
Okay. Then saving her life through the chemo, risking the life of the baby, I wouldn't be against that, because that's unintentional. The intention there isn't, hey, I'm going to kill this child. The intention there is, hey, I'm going to save this mother's life. What I am against is what you're saying. Okay. You're saying that there's a scenario somewhere out there, somewhere that I don't know about, that I'm unsure about, where killing that child, taking that child's life, is going to save the mother's life from imminent death.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that. I don't think that that's an error.
I think the overlying principle is that you treat both lives as equal, and that you try to save both whenever possible. And that, I mean, even like in case of ectopics, most of the time the baby doesn't get their nutrients and they miscarry automatically. But there are times where you can, deliver preterm and try to save the life of the baby if they have a better chance of living outside than inside.
That would be my prescription, is that if there's a case where a mother is looking really, really rough shape, she has to deliver that baby anyways, no matter what. So she can either deliver that baby dead, or she can deliver that baby alive, and they can do what they can to save the baby.
Okay. That's
what my prescription would be in that case.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you think, let's say they knew the chemo was going to kill the baby?
Yeah.
100% certain. Do you still think it's... I mean, like, again, we're dealing with, like, 99%. Like, I don't know how many babies who have, like, lived through serious chemo. Like, I feel like that's... Like, the whole, like, birth process is so fragile to begin with. Like, chemo is, like, a literal poison. Like, I mean, it's... Let's say they knew for 100% certainty, or, like, 99% certainty that it's going to kill the baby. What do you think about that baby's life? Like, what do you think about that action?
I'm so sorry. I'm getting distracted by Seth over here. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Let's say.
I'll try to listen better.
No. I appreciate it. No, I love this conversation.
Yeah.
But, so let's say they knew the chemo was going to kill the baby 100%. Like, they knew that for certain.
Okay.
What do you think about that action now? And, like, we don't know.
Yeah, I think.
100%. Like,
yeah, so. So I would say that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could answer that question or not.
I wouldn't say we're computational.
Likely okay?
Oh, that's my
is what I would say now. I'd have to think about that one for a little bit more, but
Yeah, that's fine.
but I do think it is fundamentally a false question because you can't know for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we also can't know.
There is false questions, so
That's true.
that's why it's like
I'm mostly saying that as a like.
if someone's dead on if someone's dying right there, and we don't do anything about it, and they're literally on the ground like bleeding out, and we just stand here and talk.
Exactly.
Like, that would be bad. But if we make an effort to try to save that person's life, then we shouldn't be charged with anything. But if we don't do anything and they're just bleeding out, we don't call 911, we don't say, hey, help, 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 whatever. Like, yeah, I think we're culpable.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's kind of the difference, is you're making an effort to save rather than abortion, which is just the inserting of yourself into nature to kill someone. So, but this second part is really important, which I'm guessing you're not on board with fully. Where does morality come from? Do you have like a justification for where morality comes from, period?
I believe in like there's certain, I forget what they're called. They're like first principle truths. Like I was talking about this with him. But things like meaningless human suffering is wrong.
Okay.
And there are a couple of those where we can kind of just pin down like there is no argument like for that, like, or I guess against it.
Well, the argument against it is that someone wants to enact meaningless human suffering.
I mean,
that's the argument against it.
Statement against it, though. I mean, you can't like. I guess like a correct moral statement. Like again, this gets into philosophy, which I'm not very experienced in, but
yeah, it does for sure. Like why is your opinion about those first principles better than someone else's opinion who thinks that they can make people suffer and they should, and that makes them feel good?
Because you can't make a truth statement based on that claim. Like you can't say it is like this is true because X. Because if you just follow that logic down, like it won't work. Like you can't say, I believe 2 equals 1, and then say, well, we don't know, because it's like we can know, like we can, like.
But how do we know? Down. How do we know? How do we know that your definition of we shouldn't stab people is better than the other person's definition of we should stab people?
Ooh, I wish I knew, I guess, how they come to these, like first truth claims, or I guess first principle truth claims.
Yeah, I think fundamentally a first principle truth is something that you presuppose. That you say, I'm gonna presuppose this thing because then I can make sense of everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be along the same lines of like, how do we make up our minds about like the issue of abortion? It just kind of, we follow down the logic road until we can't follow it down any further. So like it I guess requires good faith logic assessment of a claim, and then you can go down and say, okay, what's the bare minimum of this? Like I can argue against myself and just say like, okay, is it wrong to burn down a forest? And I can very quickly, like, good faith argument, like have an argument with myself and say like it is wrong to just meaninglessly burn out a forest. I guess just
so
I guess like argumentation in a way, like in the same way like logic. I'm sorry, I didn't mean like to make it sound like that, but you know what I mean.
In the same way, so
like in the same way we can deduce anything. Like we can deduce certain things as true. Like I can deduce that tree is green.
But first we have to presuppose that logic is true. And we have to presuppose the first principles that you're talking about. And what I'm saying to you is that, you know, what would you consider yourself? Agnostic?
That's a tough one.
If you say you're an agnostic.
Like,
right?
I'm not like, I guess, there was like a period where I was religious and I'm like back and forth.
Okay.
I haven't found like there's some pretty good arguments for religion. I haven't found like a ton. I guess it's a tough one.
Okay, so what I would say, my position is that you know that things are right and wrong, and that knowledge is actually innate inside of you. And the reason why I can say that is because the Bible says that. So while you say that you presuppose logic and you presuppose these first principles, which look into it. If you find a different justification for the first principles, you can talk to me about. That's fine. But what I'm guessing is that because it's a first principle, it's presupposed. And what I'm saying to you is that unless you presuppose the God of the Bible, which the God of the Bible says that His word is truth. He says, "I am truth." He says that all treasures of wisdom and knowledge are found in the Lord Jesus Christ. Unless you presuppose that, then what happens is you end up like someone like Richard Dawkins or Will Provine, where they specifically say that the end of atheism is clear, that there's no God, no right and wrong, no morals. If I die today, I'll be dead, I'll be in the ground, nothing happens, there's no afterlife, etc., etc. Because that's the logical conclusion of atheism, is that nothing matters and morality doesn't exist. But you know that morality exists just like they know it, and you have to presuppose that in order to say anyone's right or anyone's wrong for anything.
Okay, I see where that's an. I think that's a good claim, but I would kind of, I guess, like blend the definition of morality a little bit. I would say it's like, what is? It's so tough to pin one down, but like what is right and wrong? What is? I don't want to say beneficial for the most people because you can get into some slippery slopes there, but
that's exactly that's exactly the problem. Fundamentally, you either come down to you presuppose an objective moral standard, or you have no objective moral standard, and your opinion isn't better than anyone else's opinion. So you can't go to another person and say who loves loves assaulting young people. We'll call them PDF files. You can't go to them and say fundamentally what you're doing is wrong unless you have an objective standard by which to judge them. And I have an objective standard by which to judge them and say that they deserve the death penalty. Yeah. And I have an objective standard to say that rapists deserve the death penalty. I have an objective standard to say that that murderers deserve the death penalty. And what I would say further is that not only can you not account for morals, if you step off of that foundation, you also can't account for knowledge. And this is why, if I tell you that the speed limit on the road over there is 35, but I don't know, do I actually know that? Do I know that with 100% certainty that the speed limit over there, if I say, oh, the speed limit is 35, but I don't know?
Didn't you just say you don't know?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know for sure, right?
Okay.
And knowledge requires certainty. They're okay. Synonymous, right?
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Yeah, right. So you can guess at something and it might be right, but you don't know it with certainty. Again, I repeat myself, because you yourself aren't 100% convinced that you don't know it with 100% certainty.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the question for you. Could everything you know be wrong?
Could every single thing I know be
yeah.
wrong? I mean, depends what you mean by like everything. Like the fact that like
literally everything. You could be living in a matrix right now, but you don't even know it.
I was going to say like this simulation theory. But,
yeah.
Sure. I mean, simulation theory
okay.
is like kind of a
right.
argument.
So in saying that, which I think is consistent with you not being unsure about what religion is right and all this other stuff. In saying that, what you've said is whenever you make a statement like that, you're making a knowledge claim. You're saying, I know that I don't know anything for certain. And so it just in and of itself, it breaks the laws of logic to say, I know that everything I know could possibly be wrong. That breaks the laws of logic because X, it's just like the laws of identity and all that stuff.
Sure.
So in order to know anything, you either...
I'm still listening.
You're fine.
I just have to make sure I'm not... Okay.
Dude, I love the phone. That's awesome. In order to know anything, you either have to know everything because of the infinite regression. I know A because of B, because of C, because of D. I can know that tree is there because of my eyes. I can trust my eyes because I can trust my brain because I've been told that I can trust my brain and it just goes back infinitely. You either have to know everything or you have to have knowledge revealed to you from the person who knows everything. And that's what I fundamentally say is that the Bible says that. It says that we have the law of God written on our hearts. And that's how you can know what's right and wrong. And that's also how you can know anything at all.
Well, I don't think everybody knows right and wrong. Like, there are still, like, clinical psychopaths who don't understand that. It's just purely self-preservation.
Yeah, so, like...
And I guess, I know that goes into, like, the argument of, like, he isn't, like, again, people have free will, and, the idea that, like, people can be... I would say even in the religious context, they can be born with the inclination to sin, like, let's say, homosexuality.
Yep.
Even though I disagree with that, I understand that argument for sure. But
okay.
I wouldn't say that... I think, again, like, it depends on what you mean by knowledge, because, like, we sort of know stuff about, like, concrete, but, like, again, like, concrete could get up and, like, grow legs tomorrow. Like, it's kind of like a... I guess, but then we'd have to assess that.
That's the trouble, though, with this conversation, is that if you fundamentally deny absolute certainty and absolute knowledge, which is what you do when you say everything I know could be wrong, then we could get to the end of this conversation. I could have convinced you of everything, and you could walk away and you could be like, well, everything I know could be wrong. So for the rest of the conversation, it's like we're either operating under the foundation of everything we know. We can have knowledge claims, we can make knowledge claims, or we can back up knowledge claims, or we're operating under the foundation of everything we know could be wrong. And that foundation fundamentally falls out. Do you see that?
I mean, everything we know could be wrong in the same way that, like, we could all be living in a simulation. It's the same kind of sort of argument, because it's like, okay, I guess, but I'm still going to operate like the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and I think operating...
that's exactly the point, though, is that you do not operate the way that you're saying. You're saying that everything you know could be wrong, but you just also said out of the other side of your mouth, I'm going to operate in a way that I can predict the future based on the past, which is impossible in an atheistic worldview. That you're going to operate in a way that's consistent with the world around you. So, do you see that?
I wouldn't make that distinction, because that has some, again, like, you could go into 1940s Germany and have a whole different opinion on that. But I would say,
so I'm not talking about morality there. I'm just talking about you living life in a way that's consistent with I can know things. You're walking to class, you're trying to learn, you're trying to live out your life in a way, you're thinking through things, like you're not living in a way where everything I could know could be wrong. And my presupposition underneath that is that that's because God has implanted these things on your heart. And I'll just transition from that to say that it also says in Romans 1 that we deny the truth in our unrighteousness. So it's actually our sin and our desire for sin that leads us to deny God. So fundamentally, what that means is that before we're saved, we think that our sin is more important than following the God who we can clearly see has revealed himself around us through Scripture and through creation. Have you ever lied?
Of course.
What does that make you?
Technically a sinner.
But what do you call someone who lies?
Lies, a lie.
Lie, right? Yeah. So have you ever stolen?
I was 12 once.
Yeah, I did too. I stole when I was really young, a Lego. Anyways, have you ever? So Jesus says that if you look at someone with lust, you've committed adultery with them in your heart. I have. Have you?
I mean, of course.
So by those three things, if you stood before God, who is the ultimate judge, so you're in a courtroom, God's the judge, would he find you innocent or guilty by those things? Would he find you innocent of those things or guilty?
He would find me guilty if I wasn't absolved of my sins. And I understand that argument. That's, I would say...
Does that scare you? Does that concern you at all? Do you have a concern for your sin?
The presupposition of God. I mean, the presupposition of Allah is like just as damning. And I think...
but Allah...
Allah, yeah. There's a lot less evidence, in my opinion, for Allah. Like, I didn't...
Yeah, the Quran says that the Bible is true.
Yeah, there's that. I don't... That is like a very like...
It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it says the Bible is true, but then the Bible discredits the Quran. So it's like, no shame against people who are Muslim. I feel like there's a lot of, you can definitely cherry pick and find some really like good ideals in that, as in like I forget what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like the male hijab is just like not looking at other women in that way, and it kind of falls in the same vein as Christianity.
I think there's.
I'm like, that's a good testament to.
Yeah, except for their prophet. being a 9-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And again, like that's why I said cherry pick.
Aisha. But the Bible doesn't have that same problem because the Bible, the only person who was perfect in the Bible was Jesus. So when it describes the heinous things that like Abraham did, David did, all these people, you can't bring that up to me as an argument. I'm like, yeah, that's literally the point. Yeah. They did wrong and they had to repent of that.
Yeah, history books talk about history. It's completely, humans are humans. But,
right. So what's preventing you? What's stopping you from saying, I'm going to accept the gospel? Do you know the gospel? Do you understand the gospel?
I'm not in the full. I mean, I haven't.
So let me put it really simply. It's you're in that courtroom. You have that problem that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Jesus says, "I died on the cross for you. I took your place. He takes your punishment that you deserve, and it's a free gift." So he says he lays his life down willingly, and that if you accept that free gift, you will be saved. He'll give you a changed heart. He'll put the Holy Spirit inside of you, and like he's totally saved my marriage. I mean, this is a totally different thing, but
I truly respect.
I can tell. I
have
appreciate
family members who are religious, and I
Okay.
think it's one of the most beautiful things.
Okay.
And, I wish, but I think I don't know. For me, I wouldn't say it's necessarily incorrect. It's just I can't. To me, it's it's still a toss-up, and the arguments I've kind of seen on both sides are, to me, less concrete, and it's more so we don't know, and it's the best I can say is we don't know. So I guess I'm agnostic.
Yeah.
So again, even,
and that's where I would go back to, without presupposing God. Yeah, there's fine-tune arguments. There's a lot of different.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good, but fundamentally, the difficulty with those arguments is that you're making an argument with someone who denies logic. So
I do
denies knowledge. You got to go.
But yeah, I do, and this is very.
Thanks for talking, man.
I appreciate it, man.
Dude, I appreciate you. Don't let your
stand for a while, but
I'll just leave you with this thought, man. Don't let your sin separate you from God.
I appreciate it.
Okay?
Have a good one.
Have a good one. Thanks for talking.